calm, reflective documentary narration, low energy, deep voice, slow pacing, empathetic tone. Marcus was standing in line at the Apple Store on a Friday morning, not a weekend, not a holiday, just an ordinary workday. He was waiting to spend $1,199 on a phone that was roughly 3% faster than the one already sitting in his pocket. Marcus was not uninformed. He was not impulsive. He knew exactly what he was buying. He had watched every review, read every breakdown, followed every leak and rumor for months. He knew the new phone had an extra camera lens. He knew the processor was slightly faster. He knew the screen was a little brighter. But if someone had asked him a simple question, "What exactly can your current phone not do?" Marcus would not have had an answer. The phone in his pocket made calls perfectly. It sent texts instantly. It took photos good enough for Instagram. It ran every app he needed without hesitation. It was only 18 months old. It worked flawlessly. And yet, standing in that line, Marcus felt something change. Not excitement, not happiness, a quiet and uncomfortable feeling that he was somehow falling behind. The same phone he had used the night before to watch Apple's keynote suddenly felt inadequate. And this is the most important moment in the entire story. Not when Apple announced the product, not when Marcus paid for it, but the moment his perception of the phone he already owned shifted, even though the phone itself had not changed at all. 24 hours earlier, he was satisfied. 24 hours later, he felt lacking. Not because the device stopped working, not because it failed him, but because something newer now existed. That was when the illusion activated. Not inside the hardware, not inside the technology, inside Marcus's mind. Marcus did not need a new phone. He needed to believe that the one he had was no longer enough. And Apple, along with the entire tech industry, has spent billions of dollars making sure people believe exactly that. Marcus bought the new phone. He spent the weekend transferring data, reinstalling apps, and scrolling through screens that looked almost identical to what he had before. By Monday, the novelty had disappeared. The new phone felt normal. The experience was indistinguishable from the one he had left behind. The excitement lasted 72 hours. The payment plan lasted 24 months. And in 18 months, Marcus would be standing in another line, once again convinced that what he owned had suddenly become outdated. The upgrade illusion does not attack the device, it attacks perception. Marcus's story is not unusual. In fact, it is the default path. If you have ever upgraded a phone, a laptop, or a tablet and felt a strange emptiness weeks later, you have already experienced what this system is designed to do. You paid a large amount of money for an experience that feels almost identical to the one you already had. Nothing dramatic changed in your daily life. Your messages did not become more meaningful. Your photos did not transform your memories. Your work did not suddenly feel easier or more fulfilling. And yet, the money is gone. This is not an accident. It is not a side effect. It is the business model. The modern technology industry is not built on selling you an excellent device once. It is built on selling you the same device repeatedly, with small incremental changes repackaged as essential progress. Apple, Samsung, Google, and every major player in the industry understand something fundamental about human psychology. They do not need to make your current device worse. They only need to make you feel that it is worse. That is a much easier problem to solve. They solve it every year with carefully staged product announcements, relentless advertising, influencer reviews, comparison charts, and cultural hype cycles that all point in the same direction. Look at what you have, look at what you are missing. Maybe it is time. This moment is not about technology, it is about perception. A phone that worked perfectly yesterday suddenly feels old today, not because it changed, but because your reference point changed. The industry calls this innovation. In reality, it is manufactured dissatisfaction, and the scale of it is enormous.
According to industry data, the average smartphone replacement cycle in the United States is just under 3 years. Most people upgrade their phones roughly every 33 months. This happens even though modern smartphones are capable of lasting 5 to 7 years with normal use and basic maintenance. The average selling price of a smartphone is now well over $800. Flagship models routinely exceed $1,000. Over the course of a 40-year adult life, this behavior alone adds up to more than $12,000 spent on smartphones. And that number is incomplete. It does not include phone cases. It does not include chargers. It does not include insurance plans. It does not include financing fees that quietly stretch payments over months and make the cost feel smaller than it really is. And smartphones are only the beginning. Laptops are replaced every 3 to 4 years, tablets every 4, smartwatches every 3, wireless earbuds every 2. Each individual purchase feels reasonable. Together, they form a constant drain. The average household spends thousands of dollars per year on consumer electronics, not because devices stop working, but because they stop feeling new. You are not buying technology. You are buying a recurring feeling of dissatisfaction that resets itself on a predictable schedule. And once you recognize that, the question is no longer whether the industry is innovative. The question is whether you are paying for innovation or for the illusion of it. The illusion does not sustain itself through one trick. It relies on a system that works quietly, consistently, and extremely well. The first mechanism is software-driven obsolescence. Your phone does not suddenly break. It slowly feels heavier. Each year, a new operating system arrives. It promises better security, smarter features, smoother animations, and improved performance. Technically, your older device can run it. Practically, it struggles. The new software requires more processing power, more memory, more background activity, more energy. Your hardware has not changed. Its limits are fixed. So what happens is predictable. Apps open a little slower. Animations stutter where they used to glide. Battery life declines faster than before. Crashes become more frequent. You begin to feel frustrated. Not enough to think something is wrong, just enough to think maybe your phone is getting old. But you did not damage it. You did not misuse it. It was updated into degradation. The manufacturer then presents a solution that feels obvious and convenient. Buy the new device. It is designed for this software. The second mechanism is hardware repair friction. Modern devices are intentionally designed to be difficult to fix. Batteries are sealed, components are fused together, replacement parts are restricted, independent repair is discouraged or blocked entirely. A battery that costs a few dollars to manufacture suddenly costs close to $100 to replace. At that point, many people do a quick calculation in their head. Why spend money repairing an old phone when that money could go toward a new one? This conclusion feels logical, but it was engineered. The repair cost is not high because it has to be. It is high because it nudges you toward replacement. The third mechanism is the annual release cycle. This one is the most subtle and the most powerful. By releasing new devices on a predictable schedule, companies train consumers to experience time itself as a form of obsolescence. A phone bought in January feels cutting edge. By September, when the next model is announced, that same phone feels outdated. Nothing changed in the device, only the calendar changed. The keynote presentation is not just a product announcement. It is a reframing event. Every feature shown implies that your current device lacks something important. Every comparison makes your photos look slightly worse. Every benchmark suggests you are falling behind. You are not watching a presentation about a new product. You are watching a carefully constructed process designed to lower your satisfaction with the product you already own. This is why the illusion works so reliably. It does not depend on lying. It depends on emphasis. Small improvements are magnified. Large similarities are ignored. By the end, you are left with a feeling rather than a fact. A feeling that maybe it is time. And feelings are far more effective at driving spending than logic ever will be.
Calm, reflective documentary narration. Low energy, deep voice, slow pacing, empathetic tone. The next question most people ask at this point sounds reasonable. Technology does improve. New devices are better, so upgrading must make sense. This is where the illusion becomes hardest to see. Because the improvements are real, they are just not meaningful. A flagship phone from a few years ago and a flagship phone released today can both handle almost everything people actually do. They send messages, they make calls, they scroll social media, they take photos that look good on a phone screen, they stream video, they navigate maps, they handle basic work tasks. For the vast majority of users, these activities make up nearly all daily usage. The newer phone does these same tasks slightly faster, slightly smoother, with photos that are marginally better in edge cases most people rarely encounter. A 3 to 5% speed increase cannot be felt. A brighter screen matters only in direct sunlight. Higher megapixel counts do not translate into visible differences on small displays. Battery life rarely improves in a meaningful way. Efficiency gains are usually offset by larger screens and more power-hungry features. So while the marketing language speaks of leaps and breakthroughs, the lived experience barely changes. Studies have shown that when people use different generations of flagship phones side by side for everyday tasks, they struggle to tell them apart. They can identify differences in benchmarks. They can see numbers change in charts. But in real usage, the experience feels the same. This creates an uncomfortable truth. When you pay $1,000 for a new device, you are not paying for a noticeably better life. You are paying for reassurance, for status, for the quiet comfort of knowing you own the newest version. That satisfaction does not come from utility. It comes from identity, and it fades quickly. Once the novelty wears off, the device becomes normal. Once it becomes normal, the cycle begins again. This is why the comparison people often make is flawed. The alternative to buying a brand new flagship is not suffering with obsolete technology. The alternative is keeping what already works, or buying a refurbished flagship from a generation or two earlier at a fraction of the price. Those devices offer nearly the same experience for daily use. They are not obsolete, they are undervalued. They exist because someone else was convinced to upgrade for marginal gains, releasing perfectly capable technology back into the market. The illusion teaches you to ignore these options. It frames new as responsible and old as embarrassing. In reality, the value equation points in the opposite direction. When the illusion is stretched across time, its true cost finally becomes visible. Not in one purchase, not in one upgrade, but across decades. Consider two people with identical needs. They use their phones for the same tasks. They work similar jobs. They enjoy similar technology. The only difference is how often they upgrade. The first person follows the industry's rhythm. They replace their smartphone every 2 years at around $1,000. They buy a new laptop every 3 years. They replace tablets, watches, and accessories on the schedule suggested by marketing. Each decision feels reasonable on its own. Nothing feels excessive. The second person makes a different choice. They keep their phone for 4 years. They replace the battery once instead of replacing the device. They buy refurbished flagships from a generation or two earlier at a fraction of the price. They keep laptops for 6 years and only replace accessories when they actually stop working. On a yearly basis, the difference seems modest. The first person spends roughly $2,800 per year on personal technology. The second spends closer to $900, a difference of $1,900 per year. At first glance, this does not feel life-changing, but time changes the math. Over a 30-year working life, the first person spends more than $80,000 on personal technology. The second spends around $27,000. That is $57,000 in direct spending alone. But the real cost is not what was spent. It is what was never allowed to grow. If that $1,900 annual difference had been invested instead of spent, even at a conservative rate of return, it would compound, year after year, quietly, relentlessly. Over 3 decades, that stream of small decisions grows into more than $200,000, not through luck, not through risk, but through restraint.
Calm, reflective documentary narration. Low energy, deep voice, slow pacing, empathetic tone. This is the number people never calculate, because the illusion works best when payments are fragmented, when costs are monthly, when upgrades feel isolated instead of cumulative. You never feel like you spent $200,000 on phones and gadgets. You feel like you just upgraded a phone, then later a laptop, then some accessories. The illusion hides the lifetime extraction by spreading it thin across time. And once you see that, the upgrade decision stops being about technology. It becomes a question of priorities. Not today versus tomorrow, but now versus decades from now. The financial cost alone would be enough to question the cycle. But the illusion extracts more than money. It extracts resources. Every device upgrade carries an environmental cost that is almost never discussed during product launches. The majority of a device's lifetime carbon footprint does not come from using it. It comes from making it. Mining rare earth minerals, processing lithium and cobalt, manufacturing components, transporting finished products across the world. A single smartphone requires significant energy and raw materials before it ever reaches your hand. And yet, most devices are replaced long before they reach the end of their functional life. Millions of phones sit in drawers. Millions more are traded in for a fraction of their remaining value. Many end up as electronic waste. Globally, tens of millions of metric tons of e-waste are generated every year, and the number continues to grow. This waste is not harmless. The materials inside these devices are difficult to recycle. They are often extracted under poor labor conditions. They contribute to pollution in regions far removed from the people enjoying the latest upgrade. Holding on to a device for an extra year or two has a meaningful impact. It reduces demand for new manufacturing. It lowers emissions. It slows the extraction of finite resources. Yet the culture surrounding technology frames the opposite behavior as responsible. Keeping an older phone is portrayed as falling behind. Upgrading frequently is framed as staying current. This narrative benefits manufacturers, not society. The person using a 4-year-old phone is not careless or outdated. They are making a rational economic decision and a responsible environmental one.
The illusion trains people to feel embarrassed about durability. It equates newness with progress, even when no real progress is taking place. Once you recognize this, the upgrade cycle stops being a personal preference. It becomes a systemic issue. And escaping it is not just about saving money. It is about refusing to participate in a pattern that is financially wasteful and environmentally unsustainable. The final layer of the illusion is psychological. You are led to believe that the desire for something new comes from within you, that wanting the latest device is natural, that curiosity and excitement simply arise on their own. But if you pay attention, that desire almost never appears spontaneously. You do not wake up one morning unhappy with your phone. You do not suddenly decide your laptop is inadequate. The feeling arrives after exposure, after a product announcement, after an advertisement, after a review video, after scrolling past a comparison image designed to highlight what you supposedly lack. The dissatisfaction is planted. It is introduced from the outside and then mistaken for an internal need. This is why the cycle feels so personal and yet happens to millions of people at the same time. The illusion works by changing your reference point. Yesterday, your device was enough. Today, it is compared against something newer, brighter, faster. And in that comparison, it loses, even though it did not change. Once you see this mechanism, the escape becomes possible. The first step is to define your actual use case, not what the marketing says you might do, not what the device is theoretically capable of, what you actually do. Messages, email, social media, photos, navigation, streaming. For most people, a 2- or 3-year-old device handles all of this easily. The second step is maintenance. Batteries degrade, storage fills up, software accumulates clutter. Replacing a battery can restore years of usability. Cleaning up unused apps and files can noticeably improve performance. A full reset can make a device feel new again. Most performance issues are not signs of hardware failure. They are signs of neglect. The third step is to reconsider how you upgrade.
Refurbished devices exist for a reason. They offer near-flagship performance at significantly lower prices. They often include warranties. They function nearly identically in daily use. The stigma around refurbished technology is manufactured. It serves the same illusion. The fourth step is to set your own upgrade timeline. Not 2 years, not 3, 4 to 5 years for phones, 6 or more for laptops. Upgrade when something truly stops working, not when something newer appears. At that point, the illusion loses its power because you are no longer measuring your life against marketing. You are measuring it against your needs. And once you do that, the cycle breaks. At the end of this cycle, there is one uncomfortable realization. The tech industry does not see you as a user to be served. It sees you as a predictable resource, a recurring revenue stream that can be harvested on schedule. Every product launch, every influencer review, every comparison chart, every trade-in program, they all exist to ensure one thing, that you show up every 2 to 3 years ready to exchange a large sum of money for an experience almost identical to the one you already have. Marcus was not careless with money. He was the ideal customer. He waited in line to pay over $1,000 for a 3% improvement he could not perceive, and in less than 2 years he would do it again, not because his phone failed, but because his perception was altered. The illusion does not depend on deception. It depends on repetition, on constant reminders that something newer exists,
on subtle suggestions that what you have is falling behind. Your phone did not become worse when the next model was announced. Your laptop did not lose value overnight. Your device still works. What changed was the story told around it. Billions of dollars are spent each year to make sure that story reaches you, and it works, until you see it. The moment you recognize that the dissatisfaction is manufactured, not earned, the spell breaks. You stop measuring your devices against artificial standards. You stop feeling urgency where none exists. You keep what works, you replace what is truly broken, and you invest the difference. Not just money, attention, energy, freedom from a cycle designed to keep you perpetually unsatisfied. You are not behind. You are being told you are behind by people who profit when you believe them. Once you stop believing them, the illusion collapses, and what remains is a simple truth. Enough is already in your hands.